join me in welcoming Casey Lelou, CEO of this year's Platinum sponsor, IntelliPay. Casey has a passion for technology, software, and leading fintech companies into the new digital frontier. He has over 18 years of payment industry experience and extensive knowledge of payment. He will be sharing his expertise on understanding the layers of card processing to protect your budget. Please join me in welcoming to the stage, Casey to the stage, and thanking him for being this year's Platinum Conference sponsor.
Thank you.
Yep, good luck.
All right. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. We're off to the races. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that. I have an interesting last name. Almost as famous as Chris Ledoux. So when I introduce myself, I can say Casey Lelou. Grandpa comes from Holland instead of from France, so it's a Dutch background. So I've actually traveled, and it's been Lelux instead of Lelou. So I go by both. Doesn't matter. Just don't call me late for dinner, and I'll be fine. I've been in the credit card business for a long time. I'm still learning a lot of things about the credit card business. It seems like it's a very fast-paced industry, constantly moving. There's stuff going on here. Now we have things like Instapayments and FedNow coming up, and what's that going to do to the market? But today I really just wanted to take a moment and just try to help you guys understand some of the parts of the credit card world. There's a lot of players, and so you'll hear all sorts of different things, and that'll make the head spin of what really are we talking about here, or what piece does that do, or why do we need to connect to this, and who is that? I also have a passion to help you guys with your budgets. So I know right now, I don't think a lot of people have huge surpluses in their budget and don't mind paying lots of money for credit card processing. So I'm going to try to keep this fun, because looking at a credit card statement is not fun, but I'm going to try to do the best that I can to help you guys understand when you look at the statements what's going on, how that works, and we'll try to see what we can do here. So my purpose here is twofold. One is to help you understand the layers, players and costs involved in the credit card system, and then the second one is to hopefully help you understand what are the stuff that you need to protect your budgets. Okay? I also have, well, when you go to unwrap layers of the credit card processing world, one does not simply do one layer. There's a bunch, okay? So let's just see how you put these together. You have gateways, you have processors, you have settlement banks, you have networks, and then you have card brand database. So you got all these different stuff that's all thrown together, and when you talk to people that do credit card processing, they'll start throwing these words out at you. Heaven forbid if they start throwing out some of the industry acronyms, but I tried to keep it simple with the gateways, processors, settlement banks, networks, and card brand database. So how do all these fit together? So the card brand database is where, when you're assigned a credit card number, that's where that number goes. And it's secret vault, and that's where the numbers are stored. So when we go to get an authorization, you send the credit card number along with the string of all the information, and Visa comes back with, or MasterCard comes back with, yeah, that's the card, and yeah, the card is authorized or declined for whatever reason. So that's the card brand database. Then you have networks. Networks are companies that have built the secure access into those card brand databases. So I left some laser pins on your guys' table. And for the folks at home that are watching virtually, I apologize, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this. But the laser pins, yeah, I want participation here, and I'll be calling out some things, because I know if you're like me, I love to point these at things. Just please don't point them at airplanes. That's the legal disclaimer that I had to do, is no pointing at airplanes, and don't point them at people's eyes, okay? So let's not do that. But networks, yes. Okay, the first one, TSYS. Oh, sorry. Got to press the right button here. TSYS and Global, they bought each other. They're the same company now. You have First Data, Fiserv, WorldPay, FIS, Chase Payment Tech, Elavon uses, and US Bank. And there's, I think, a couple more that actually are out there. And these are networks that we have to piggyback on in order to access card brand information. Then you'll have a gateway or a terminal. So gateways like IntelliPay, Authorize.net, BridgePay is another one. These are gateways out there. There's many more. These are gateways that connect to that network so that they can send the information through. Terminals can also connect directly to the card brands and the network. So you have Pax, Ingenico, Verifone, Deja Vu. There's several of these manufacturers that create the hardware. And so you can connect to a network and get those authorizations either directly through the credit card machine or through a gateway. And then you have the products. So you'll have online portals where people can go and pay their bill online. You'll have integrated terminals, virtual terminals, mobile apps, IVR. Those are all the products that the third parties build that connect to connect and connect, okay? So then on top of that, you have the processors. The processors will create a credit card account. So the processors will do the underwriting, they will maintain risk, and they'll do fraud prevention and those types of things and service the merchant account. So your MID or your merchant ID is assigned by the processor. And you have people like Priority, PaySafe, Chase does their own, Elavon does their own. There's a lot of different processors that are out there. So many players in the space. And then last of all, you have settlement banks. So these are the banks that actually move the money once the transaction is authorized. So you got to go through this whole little network and stream of processing in order to make the credit card get authorized or declined. So how do they all flow together? Let's say you're a customer and you're going to go make a payment online. When you make that payment online, whatever third-party product that you use that are out there, it's going to be connected to a gateway or a terminal. And so that's going to be connected to a network that's going to go into the card brand database. Okay, so you guys hanging with me on that one? I think that flow makes it pretty understandable. So when you're talking to people that do credit cards and they start throwing out these terms, you're going to be able to go, oh, yeah, I know the gateway. The gateway connects us to a network, and the network connects to the card brand database. And once that hits the card brand database, it comes back with the authorized or declined response. Then it comes through this whole process back, and it updates the customer. And if it's an authorized transaction, it'll get posted through the processor, and then it's going to tell the bank to move the money. And all of that happens within like seconds. And so from a CEO standpoint, we're a technology company and a payment company combined, because that whole layer of processing that has to happen happens within seconds. And you guys know that it's not perfect. There are times when things time out or something goes wrong, but this is really the players that are involved in that, and it'll help you understand the flow and how transactions are working. Okay? And we'll have questions at the end if you guys have any questions. But hopefully you guys understand how this is going and we can put it all together. All right, once they get to the settlement bank, the bank is what moves the money into your account. Now you can have next day funding, which is if you process a transaction on Monday, you receive the funds on Tuesday, or there's normally 2-day funding, which is if you process transactions on Monday, you get the funds on Wednesday. Okay? So those are the typical timing of the transactions and the settlements of the payments. All right. Okay, the biggest question that I get, right? When I tell people, what do I do for a living? And I'm the CEO of IntelliPay, and I do credit card processing. They go, oh, what are your rates? And, you know, if I had a magic wand, everybody gets a lower rate. I'd be like Oprah, and I'd just give everybody the lowest rate possible and just say, here we go, let's live happily ever after. But what I want to show you when we walk through this is there's only so much that I can do as a agent or a broker or somebody that represents a processor. There's only so far I can go down because Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, the card brands, they're the ones that really have the rates and they control that. Okay, but if I had the magic wand, I'd just give everybody low rates. All right, so as we go through this, to help you guys protect your budget, I wanted to break it down into the roadmap. So I want to talk about, first of all, card present versus card not present. Why is that important? What does a card present payment mean? What does CNP mean, which is card not present, right? All these acronyms that'll be thrown out to you. What's a debit card versus a credit card? And why does that matter? You know, we'll go through that. What the heck is interchange? I don't know if you guys have ever heard of interchange. Some of you may have heard pricing when they say, oh, I just do pricing on an interchange plus X cost basis. And what does that mean? Because interchange, that if you can understand a little bit about interchange, then that'll help you with your budgeting and see where your true costs are coming from. Okay? And then how the rates are applied. You know, what does that mean to your budget? And then last of all, what are the alternative options that you can use to help protect your budget and go in different directions and be creative? What are some of the things that you can do if your departments are experiencing high cards rates and there's not, you know, what are your guys' options to make them lower? And we want to go through that. Okay? So let's talk about card present versus card not present. Your card present transactions is basically anything that's tapped, dipped, or swiped in person, right? So if you go to the convenience store or Starbucks or whatever and you are tapping or you're inserting or swiping your credit cards, we don't do a lot of swiping anymore, right? For security purposes, they moved over to the EMV where we dip with the radio chip in there. That radio chip allows that transaction to go through on a one-time basis. Tapping is also done with the chip, and it's done with an encrypted code that goes through that associates that transaction so that skimmers, which is what people were doing with the Stripe, is you could stripe or swipe your cards, and people would skim the magnetic Stripe information and then use that to generate fraudulent cards. So when they made the change to the EMV with the computer chip on the card, it made it much more secure. But then that made it kind of inconvenient for people because now you have to stick your card in and you have to wait. And so many people were used to just swiping and get my stuff and I'm walking out the door and it's all good. Oh man, you gotta tell me I gotta dip my card in. And then in some of the government places where you do the 2-transaction model for the fee-based, you had some people were dipping it twice and it was very inconvenient. And then, so a lot of people came along with, oh no, let's just tap it. And so tap to pay is really easy now, and I like that one. Okay, some of the hardware that you can use is terminals, there's smart card readers, mobile, point of sale systems. Like I said, anything that's tap, dip, or swipe is a card present transaction. So what's a card not present transaction? Well, anything where the card is not present, and that can be online, it can be on a customer portal, over the phone, IVR, the text to pays, and link to pays that are sent in emails. So basically the card holder is not where the machine is, and they're not tapping, that is card not present. I know everybody, that makes sense to everybody, but I just want to make sure, because when we talk about how the credit cards are priced in the industry, knowing the distinction about where those cards are coming in will help you understand the different prices and why one's higher than the other. Okay? All right, what's the difference between debit card and credit card?
Question?
Yeah,
on that.
sure.
You'd think there'd be some innovative person who would say a lot of transactions go online and that it is more expensive when you don't have that extra protection, that they could have some type of a tap, or you could tap it if you have
A screen.
If you have the screen that's you could touch and screen. Is there any of that out there? Or
Not
is there
yet, but
movement to that? Because otherwise that would really lower the cost for all of our government agencies that, you rely now on online payment versus maybe walk-in traffic.
right. So for those of you at home that may not be able to hear the question is, no, that's a really good question. So why aren't people doing something so on the screens a person can do something with their device to make it more secure so that it's kind of a card-present transaction because there's something on the screen that would coordinate to the mobile device, and I think you'll see it. I think you'll see QR codes. You'll start to see two-factor authentication that comes through where kind of like where you log into your Outlook or Google and you give it a two-factor authentication. I think you'll start to see companies make that leap to where, okay, this is you on the screen. Okay, type in your cell phone number or do something so that it sends you a notice to your mobile device and you can say, yep, that's me. Click on that and it'll go through as a much safer transaction. I do think you'll see that come down the line. Not yet, but I do believe it's coming.
Thank you.
Yes, good question, by the way. Yeah, because if you can do that and you can authenticate who you are, I think that would also help for chargebacks, right? We're not even discussing chargebacks, but I know that's a big pain in the bum for a lot of the cities and counties and the state departments that we work at. It's like, hey, we provided everything for this transaction and yet the person still won, and it's kind of a crazy process. So maybe next year we can come back and talk about how to dispute chargebacks and win, okay? All right, so the big thing, who's got our pins? I want you guys to highlight the bottom right here. So if you could circle that for me, there we go. So the big thing is with debit cards. Debit cards, there's two types. There's a regulated debit card, and then there's a non-regulated debit card, okay? The regulated debit cards are issued from financial institutions that have over $10 billion in assets. And so what that means is there was a Durbin Act that was issued a few years ago that said if you're a big bank and you have $10 billion in asset, the cost on your debit cards are going to be much lower. That's a regulated debit card, and I'll show you that cost. For you guys in your departments, regulated debit cards are your bestest, goodest friend, okay? Just keep that in the back of your mind. And then you have non-regulated debit cards, and those are from the other financial institutions that are smaller. So your city banks, your credit unions, stuff like that, those are non-regulated debit cards. The main factor for you that we all looked at is debit cards are tied to a bank account. It's not a line of credit. So it's going to come right out of your bank account, and because it comes out of the bank account, there's not a lot of rewards there. Now, I know some banks try to give some type of reward or service for your debit card, but it's not like the Capital Ones, the American Expresses, the Chase Signatures, and those types of big credit cards where you're going to get a lot of rewards on the back end. So because it's coming from a debit card, no rewards, lower costs. So just remember that, okay? All right, a credit card, it's connected to a line of credit, and there's two types, right? Personal and business. And the big thing with those that I need you to remember is high rewards, higher cost, okay? So remember, debit card, hardly any rewards. I can't say no rewards because I think there's some little stuff that's tied to it. But basically, little rewards, low cost, and the credit cards are high rewards, high cost. So somebody's paying for that trip to Cancun. And it's not the banks, it's the people who are using the cards. So that's something to keep in mind as we go forward and talk about this. Okay, if I had to lay it out for you guys on a scale of low to high, what are the costs of the cards that are involved in what you're receiving for your departments? I put this slide out here so that you guys can understand. So the least expensive card is a regulated debit card. And it doesn't matter on a regulated debit card if it's card present or card not present. Due to the Durbin Act, they're priced the same. Now, some people ask me a question, hey, Casey, if somebody comes up to the credit card machine and they want to process the debit card, but they hit credit so they don't have to type in their PIN number, how does that card get processed? It's still processed as a debit card. It just goes through the Visa, MasterCard normal rails. It doesn't go through what we call a PIN debit network, which is a different network. So some people think that, oh my gosh, I'm paying more money for debit cards because it's a PIN-based, or they're clicking credit whenever they go to process the card, and that's not true. On the back end, when those credit cards come through into the card brand database, Visa, MasterCard see that that card came through as a debit card, no matter how it got there, and if it's a regulated debit card, it gets priced as a regulated debit card. So signature or PIN debit, you're gonna have the same price on regulated debits. On non-regulated debits, there's a little bit of price difference, but not much. Okay? So then you have the card, let me see, right here, you have debit cards. That would be the non-regulated debit cards. And if you have a card present one, that's going to get a much lower rate. And if you have a debit card CNP, which is our card not present, so anytime somebody goes online and pays their tax or speeding ticket or something like that on online utilities, then the debit card, that's going to be a good one. That's a good price, you know, when people do that. Now here's where you start to tip the scale, right? If you go to a credit card, but you're in person, then it's going to be a lower rate than it would be the credit card for your card not present. So your most expensive credit card out there is going to be a business rewards card in a card not present environment. Okay? Your lowest cost is going to be a regulated debit card, and whether that's online or in person, it won't matter. That's your lowest cost. So that's your slide right there. That's your, you know, in between you have different costs, but that's going to give you a good idea of when you look at your credit card statements, how is it fluctuating in between? Okay? All right. What the heck is interchange, right? It's just, I don't even understand it half the time because there's like 120, and I think they're adding more, 130 different interchange categories. It's all based on, you know, a lot of different factors that I want to introduce to you today. So interchange is basically the wholesale buy rates that the card brands put out to use their cards. And it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart. The wholesale buy rates are the same. Now, the nice thing is the government sector has what we call an emerging market rate. And so you get a different category and your pricing's a lot lower. Also, utilities have an emerging market rate, and that can also be a lower cost than normal processing. But they have all sorts of different categories out there. They have categories for hotel and lodging, retail, the convenience stores. I would walk into a convenience store and use my credit card for a drink, and my drink was maybe $1.20, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this guy's paying high credit card rates on this one drink. How is he making any money? Well, then I learned that there's a special interchange rate for small ticket. And a small ticket, these convenience stores have a special category. So when it comes in and it's a lot of low ticket items, they get a special lower rate than the normal people would. So I was like, huh, all right, that's pretty cool, helping out the stores. But there's all sorts of different categories, okay? And so when you guys look at yours, just know that there's a lot of different reasons why that card is priced the way that it's priced. So for the first one is the use of the card. That card is going to be expensed to you based on whether that transaction was processed at a card present or card not present environment. Next one is the type of card. Is it a debit card or is it a credit card, right? You remember our scale? Keep that in mind when you start factoring how these cards are going to be priced. What industry you're in. That's where I mentioned government has lower, utilities have lower, retail, lodging, supermarkets, they all have these different categories, but the wholesale rate for all people in that category does not change, the wholesales. And then the amount of the payment. Wow, you mean if I take a payment for $5 and then I take a payment for $2,000, the interchange rate could be different based upon the amount of the transaction? And the answer is yes, depending upon the card brand that card comes in through. So this person over here, you know, that meme where the head's spinning with interchange, I'm glad I didn't have to come up with that algorithm to figure out how these cards are going to be processed and what that means to you guys. Luckily, that's all done for us and behind the scenes. And so I just hope that I can explain it to you guys in a really good way. So here is a sample credit card statement. Anybody see a credit card statement before? Yeah, aren't they fun to look at? I mean, if you can't sleep at night and you really need some help, start trying to read one of these things and that'll put you to sleep really fast. So, and trying to make this fun for you guys, hopefully I don't put you to sleep as we go through a credit card statement. But remember how we talked about by volume? So American Express, if you look at the interchange rate on theirs, so you have 3 levels. And if we look at the average ticket on tier 2, 8 goes into the 896, roughly $100, $125, $150. So I don't know what the exact tier is for that, but if you figured, okay, anything between X, $50 and $150 is tier 2, fill in the blank, I'm not sure if that's true, but you look and see that the average ticket is around $125, $150. That interchange category is 1.7% and 10 cents. Help me out with our little blinkers right there. 1.7 and there we go. Yeah, thank you. Everybody see? That's where the cost is on your interchange statement, okay? All right, so now let's say, oh, somebody comes through with a bigger amount. All right, so this one's gonna be, we had 7 transactions come through for $7,500, so roughly $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 average ticket on that one, and our price is 2% plus 10 cents. Then at tier 4, excuse me, you see that one came in for 3 transactions, and the total card volume on those 3 transactions was $18,925.18. So the average ticket on that one, $6,000, $7,000, whatever that is, and American Express says, oh, that's a much higher transaction that came through, so I'm going to charge you a higher fee for allowing that bigger amount to come through your system, right? And that comes out to be 2.4% and 10 cents. And so American Express does it by that, and the pricing's not too bad in the government space. You know, typically you've heard of American Express being over 3% in certain areas, and yes, that does happen, but in this particular case, you're under 3% for American Express in the government space. Okay. we talked about the most expensive transaction that we had out there on our scale, and that was the business rewards card, right? So in this example, you have a MasterCard World Elite card, and you had 2 of them or 3 of them, and they were for 20. The total amount for all 3 was $2,351, and so that came in at 2.5% and 10 cents. Everybody see that one? That right there. So yeah, that's a little bit of an expense right there, and that's just the wholesale cost. So that does not include an agent or a broker or a representative for the processor that needs to make their margin on top of that. Okay? Then we have a normal debit card. So this would be on our scale. This would be the 2 that were on the left side of the scale. But this one is in a CNP environment, or the card not present environment. And so that one came in at 1.65% and 15 cents. And then we have, our favorite, the regulated debit card. Okay, if there was a way that we could just have regulated debit cards in the industry for those cities or counties or government entities that are absorbing the cost, then you guys would be pretty okay. Pretty okay, right? Pretty okay. Because you can see that this one is 5 basis points and 22 cents. So the cost on regulated debit cards is much lower. We can thank Uncle Durbin for that, with the Durbin Act that they pushed through in the legislature to make sure that these cards that were issued by large banks came in at a much lower price. And this doesn't matter, like I said, if it's card present or card not present, you're going to get that lower fee. Okay, then we have what the card brands like to do is they just like to throw in a few extra fees. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. But the agent, the processors like us, we don't have any control over this. This pricing that comes through is usually on a pass-through basis, and there's nothing that we can do to control that. In fact, I think it's kind of funny because, let me see, this bottom one down here is a FANF fee. And we joke around the office that when that came out, it stood for find another fee, because Visa was just trying to, charge you guys a little bit more. So the FANF fees, those are interesting. All right. Let's see who really makes the money. Fire away. Oh, we got that. Okay, you got it.
It'll turn on in just a second. Okay, is this on yet?
Not yet.
It's not on yet? I think it is now. Is it on now?
Oh, there we
Yes,
go.
It's on now.
We got it live.
So, 2 questions. One is on the American Express. My understanding is you have to make sure you're getting the government rate. So you need to make sure your processor, and it can't be, it's difficult if it's maybe bundled, or you have to make sure that you have applied for that government rate in order to get that 2% or less, I believe.
Correct.
Because that really is helpful for
Right.
them. And I know you talk about the emerging markets rate, that's the government rate, but since really government only, I mean, in some cases that are non-tax, there's products they may provide a little, but certainly if it's a tax, if someone pays with a credit card and the card rejects, the government hasn't lost anything, because you don't lose clothing, you don't use anything that you're buying. Do you think it's ever possible to get a lower government rate like the utility rate, which is the 50 cents or the 65 cents, because there really is not going to be any fraud. No one's going to be able to take off these Gucci bags and sell them for a lot less, because it's really just a tax. Do you see that? That's my first question. Then I have one other question.
Can I answer the first one then? Okay, good, because throwing 2 at me up here on the stage with all these people might make me a little too nervous to answer that. I don't know that you'll see the pricing go as low as the utilities, just because you still have what I call friendly fraud out there. So I'll just give you this recent scenario that I came across with a county that I worked with. So That person ordered a birth certificate, signed all of the information, had it before a notary that this was me, I need this birth certificate, and yet when they went and paid for the transaction, it was paid for with somebody else's card. So when the transaction came through, that person received the birth certificate, so it wasn't a Gucci bag, it wasn't, you know, a pair of Nikes or golf balls or something like that. They received the birth certificate, and yet they went back and charged back the transaction because they said, I didn't authorize that payment. I still see chargebacks, although they're extremely rare in the government space. And because there's that chargeback risk, I don't know that you'll see the governments get any lower than the current emerging market rate.
Right, and I would say that getting a birth certificate is a product, so I'm talking about taxes.
Just the tax place?
Taxes are, you know, really revenue raising only. There's, you know, theoretically you get services from the government, of
Sure.
course, which all of us provide, but they're not tied specifically to that dollar of tax. If there's a tax rate, that would be, you know, maybe we at APT, we look at legislation nationally and say, is there something, because this is just the tax, not the ones that are, you know, you could go to a class and of course you could take the class and then the card rejects and you've had that service of the class. So I'm really just talking about taxes.
How about if
That
we
would
could
be
get
nice.
taxes at no cost for you?
Well, there's rewards, so, but if we could get them down to a very low rate, and then you obviously have rewards, because those are, you know, those are, someone has to pay for them, I
Right,
agree.
well-
I mean, it would be great if it could be low rates.
Exactly.
But-
So if you have a situation where the city or the county as a treasurer and you guys are going to absorb the fees, I'm not sure that we can get it any lower than that. That would be something that you would need to work with Visa and MasterCard and work on getting a lower rate than the emerging market rates. But I don't want to steal my thunder because later in my presentation, I want to talk to you guys about the alternatives that you have. And specifically in the tax industry, you have the ability to make it a no-cost solution by passing the fee on to the customer. And we can talk about that in a little bit. But that's the no-cost solution. And I don't want to get into it too much now, but I will get into it at the end.
Right, you do have a lot of elected people here that may not want to pass on fees.
That's true.
So you also have someone, you know, I mean, you know, who pays. But anyway, I was going to add a question on international because we're starting to get a lot of international, but I can take that offline and ask after.
No, international,
Because is there
I
an
mean,
assessment plus, you know, does that start changing the rate significantly?
it does, yeah, because you have the exchange rates, and Visa's going to charge you, or MasterCard's going to charge you for doing the calculation to convert that from their euro or their Canadian dollar to our US dollar. And so, yes, an international fee is going to be tacked on there. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, getting back to who makes the money here. The following three slides are from a credit card statement, and I just want to show you a little bit on what's going on here. So as an agent or a broker or somebody that's going to resell that credit card account to you, we have our profit margin. And so in this scenario, you can see that the 8 basis points is what this particular situation is, where the agent or the person selling the account marked it up. So all of the wholesale rates that we looked at in the previous slide, if you added 8 basis points, that's what the representative is going to make on your processing. So you have wholesale rates, and that's often called interchange. And then when you say plus cost or interchange plus model, that is where the agent or the representative that's giving you guys the merchant processing, that's going to be their margins in that situation. So here, you can see what they make. Yeah. Another question.
I didn't want to interrupt your sentence. Sorry. We interrupt Casey all the time.
Go ahead.
What is if you're doing an exchange plus the basis points for the rep, what is industry average?
Oh, that's a great question, because the government space, the margins are very low. right? You guys are typically a low-risk account, and it's very competitive. And so you can have anything from 5 to 20 basis points as far as that margin goes for the representative to make.
So 5 would be good.
5 would be extremely good. If you're at 5 basis points, then you're doing pretty good.
I'll stop arguing.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then let me see. Here's all the fees that are being. Let me see. Yeah, here's the fees that are being paid. We're also charging a 10-cent per item, and so that's also going to carry over to a profit margin. Now, a lot of times, that profit is being shared between the processor and the agent, right? And so that's really what we're playing with here as far as the profit goes on the account. Everything else, if we look at, is going towards the card brands. And in fact, on the more card brand fees, you know, that's being charged by the card brands. That does not go to the agent or the processor. So in comparison, if we look at who's getting the money, the agent or broker is getting the $49.59 that they were making on the 8 basis points, and then the $244 that they were making on the transaction fees, and that's what's going to the rep who's taking care of your account. And everything else is going to the card brands. So when you ask the question of what's the average rate above interchange, you know, there's only so much that you can squeeze that agent or representative to you guys on, okay, after a while, it just doesn't, I'm not going to make any money on this account, so I'm not going to give you any good service. So allowing them to have between 5 to 20 basis points in margin, it helps. And when I say 20 basis points, that would be if it's a low volume account, there's not a lot going through, because you want to have the agent or broker that's representing at least be incentivized to help you a little bit and not just cast you off and say, well, I don't make any money on this account, so I'm not going to really do anything. And in this case, you can see that 14% goes to the agent and the 86 goes to the card brands. Okay? On page 1, we see that the total amount, when I showed you the prior screen, the total volume, and this is what I want you guys to remember. Because you remember that Oprah screen, what's my rate? You know, give me a lower rate. This is a ballpark for you guys to manage your departments on what should my rate be? Whereabouts should I be, or what's a gauge that I know that I'm doing good, okay? And so in order for you to do that, I want you to calculate what we call our net effective rate. And that's when you take the total volume that you're processing and divide, or take the total fees and you divide by the total amount, and that's going to get you your net effective rate. So I know you can go in and try to understand all of the individual line items and try to see what's going on, but before you do that, just as a high level, what am I really paying on this merchant account? You should take your total amount paid and divide it by your total volume, and that's going to give you a net effective rate. A good gauge for government, you guys should be below 3% for sure. If you're doing card not present and you're getting a lot of business cards coming through, then you'll probably be on the other side of that, maybe. But below 3%, you should always be below 3%. In your industry and your market, and with the buy rates that you have for the emerging market rates, you should be below 3%. So if you guys do a calculation and it's over 3%, an alarm should go off. Like, hey, Casey, you're up here saying it should be lower than 3%, but wait, you have 3.4%. What the heck? Why is that coming up? That's when the alarm should go off in your mind. You go, okay, wait, Casey said that we should be below 3%. Something's not right. Okay? And that's where, if we look at this line item, you remember when I talked about the find another fee, the FANF fees? Well, in this particular situation, the processor made a mistake. And you guys as treasurers would be able to say, wait, that's not right. That seems awfully high. Can you go back and check that out? And if you can save yourself a couple $100, I think everybody would be happy about that, right? So in this particular situation, that $222 was charged incorrectly. It was way more than it should. And if you lowered that or took it out, the effective rate would now be below 3%. And so that's where I want you guys, have an exercise when you go back, pull out your statement that if you received over the last month and just do kind of a high-level overview. You don't have to go line by line, because that would be boring and terrible and just not fun. But just for curiosity, go and take your total amount that you processed and take the amount that you paid in fees and then divide it by the total amount processed, just to get a gauge of where you're at. And if something is high, that's when you can go back in and start saying, oh, maybe there's something here. Call your rep on the phone. Hey, I'm over 3%. Why? Let's look at it together and do an analysis to see if somebody's not throwing in some bogus fees. Processors, unfortunately, love to throw in fees that may or may not apply. But you may have something in there like a non-PCI fee. Maybe you guys have done the PCI, which is the security stuff that you have to do to be able to process cards. There are questionnaires out there. There's self-assessment questionnaires that you have to fill out. Maybe you guys filled it out and you sent it in, but your PCI person that works with the credit card provider did not update the account. So now you're paying a $50 a month non-PCI fee when you should be paying a lower $9 PCI fee. I mean, you're paying a non-PCI fee, right? And getting hit with this extra fee. And that's where you need to start digging in and seeing, wait, I'm over 3%, what's wrong? And hopefully you can talk to your agent or rep, and they can walk through and do an analysis for you to make sure that you're paying what you're supposed to be paying. Okay? That will help you protect your budget. If there's anything that you can take away from my presentation today, it's how to calculate your net effective rate. And if it's over 3, start digging. Okay? All right. So what happens? Oh my goodness. We've tried to squeeze as much as we can out of that agent, and he's down at the 5 basis points or 8 basis points, and he's crying uncle. And Casey's saying, hey, I just can't give you any more. I won't make any money out of the account. It is what it is. And now you're like, okay, what can we do? What are some of our alternatives to make this happen? There's convenience fees, and we're going to go through these. There's surcharging, service fees, debit only, and more ACH. So let's talk about convenience fees for a second. I think everybody's familiar with convenience fees if you've bought movie tickets online. Right? So the idea behind convenience fees is if I have an alternative process to pay and I don't have to go and stand in line at the desk to pay my fee, then I'm given a convenience of paying my bill online so that you can assess a convenience fee. But you have to provide a card not present solution so that if I do walk into the office, I'm not charged the fee. So that's convenience fees, and convenience fees are usually a flat amount that are assessed to the amount due. Okay? The hard thing about this is that that fee amount goes into your operating account, and now you have to expense the $4 and divide them out. So it gets a little messy, right? If you're in a situation where you have a trust account and you're only supposed to receive $100 into that bank account, and you get $104, the auditors go, wait a second, what's going on? And that puts you in a different situation. There are certain circumstances where a convenience fee works. Utility space, that seems to work a little bit for some people. Other people don't like it, but that fee just comes into that. Now, another factor is you may collect more or less than the amount of your bill. It's not an exact science. And so I call this program a cost reducer program. It's not a no-cost solution, all right? And it only works for card not present transactions. But the convenience fees are out there. People are used to them, right? They're very familiar with it. I would say 10 years ago when we started to do convenience fees, people pushed back. But nowadays, more and more people are used to paying fees, especially when you look at, all the apps that are out there like StubHub and some of these other things or Grubhub, and you're paying an extra fee for the transaction. So people are getting used to paying these extra fees with their payment. Surcharging. Okay, this one is very interesting. It has a bad name. A lot of people look at surcharging as, ooh, that's evil, that's really bad. But I kind of look at it, and at IntelliPay, we call it the Fair Pay program. Well, Casey, why do we call it the Fair Pay program? Well, because I think it's kind of the fairest program that's out there. Because if somebody is going to use their credit card, the fee can only be assessed to a credit card. So if you remember, credit cards are lines of credits, and they're tied to what? High rewards programs. So if Casey wants to use his American Express card so he can get miles, well, then Casey should have to pay the fee to use his card. Okay, he's getting the rewards. He's going to this trip, so the people that use credit cards are assessed a fee. So you're allowed to charge up to 3% on that credit card. If it's a debit card, guess what? It's not charged a fee. So your lower rates, your regulated debit cards at that 5 basis points and 22 cents and the 1.65%, that would have to be absorbed by you guys because there's no fee that's added onto it for a debit card. So you have the situation of, hey, if you want to use your credit card, you're going to be assessed a fee. If you don't want to pay the fee, use your debit card. And you have a behavior here that the public kind of works its way through and says, oh, okay, well, I don't want to pay a fee. Okay, use your debit card and we're not going to charge you a fee. What does that do for you guys? It lowers your rates because the number of people doing credit cards gets significantly reduced. People that are using debit cards are increased, and those are the lower rates that you guys like. Uh-oh, questions? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment. You charge up to 3%, but not more than the average cost
Right,
of your
yeah,
ticket.
this is true. They don't want you, the big thing with that is card brands don't want people making money on surcharging. So beforehand, what they had is people that were charging 4, 5, 6% and being egregious, and they were actually turning that into a profit center. Not the governments, but other people that were out there were doing that. So you have a lot of these rules now, especially in Colorado, where they said you can only charge up to the amount of the cost. And what you don't want to do is charge more so that you're making money on the program. Yeah. Okay, another one? Yes.
Hi, can you please layman term the difference between convenience and surcharge? Our legal staff said we can't charge, we can't pass it through because
Yes,
it's the same to them.
that's interesting. I would probably disagree with that a convenience fee is the same as a surcharge. Convenience fee, like we said, the ruling or kind of the structure behind the convenience fee is you are providing a convenience for the consumer to do something online. And there are none that I know of any legislatures out there that are against convenience fees. It's surcharging that they're against, and that was because they were egregious in a lot of instances. And now you have legislatures coming through and saying, like Colorado is the latest one to come out. I think there was another one that just came out too that said you can only charge up to 3% or the amount of your cost for those cards. And so people are starting to see that surcharging is, if we can monitor it and bring it down and not allow people to abuse it, it is a fair program. But surcharging can be charged in a card present and a card not present environment. And so that's kind of the big difference there. But if you think about it and look at your legislature, some of them still have, depending upon what state you're in, some of them have that you're not allowed. The state said you can't do a surcharge. But then the courts said, well, that's unconstitutional, so it's not enforceable, and it's in this limbo stage. So I'm not an attorney, and I'm not going to try to combat what your attorneys say. I'll just say that a convenience fee is different, and if you buy a movie ticket inside the state where they say you can't do surcharging, that should be the proof alone to show you that convenience fees are not illegal. Surcharging is, but it might not be enforceable, so they're in these limbo stages. Okay? But again, surcharging, it doesn't hit a debit card. It does hit a credit card, and yeah, you have to. So it's not a cost reducer. Well, it is a cost reducer. It's just not a 100% no-cost solution. The service fee is really what I want to spend some time on. So just like, was it Sherry? So yeah, you've got that agent down to 5 basis points, and he's like crying uncle, I can't do anymore. But yet it's still killing the budget, and you guys need to reduce costs. Visa came out with this program called the Government and Higher Education Program, and what it allows you to do is charge a fee on credit cards and debit cards. You can do it in a card present and a card not present environment, and what happens is, to keep it clean, like if you got to go pay your speeding ticket, the court has a trust, and they can't have that extra fee go into that trust account. So what it does is it's a 2-transaction process. It'll say XYZ court on the $100 speeding ticket. Yeah, we wish, but that, for my math, that's what I'm going to do. And that will go into the court's bank account. The $3 transaction fee, or the $2.50, whatever that percentage is, we do 2.5% on transactions over $60 to keep it below 3%, to try to make it as fair as we can. But that, let's say $2.50 goes into the bank, our bank account, and then we use that to cover the cost. So the service fee model becomes a 100% no-cost solution. You guys don't have to worry about any bills. You don't have to worry about any net effective rates, because that fee comes to the service fee provider, and then we use that fee. It's basically a white glove service. We do everything for you, right? The support fees, the PCI fees, everything is done out of that fee amount, and it allows us to provide a no-cost solution for especially the taxes and any other department that you feel like that would be applicable to. Okay? This one is 100% no-cost solution. And if you'd like to learn more about that, please come by our booth, and our guys will tell you about that. All right. The other one is you can do is accept debit only. We have a county in California where if people walk in, they can only pay with a debit card. They will not accept credit cards in the card present environment. And so they just locked it down. Yeah, people complained a little bit, but once they understood it and the signage was out, people come in and their behavior was modified so that they just do their debit cards, and it saves that department a lot of money in that card present environment. You may get a little pushback, but again, it'll work and it'll save you some money. And then ACH. So ACH right now is growing in popularity. A lot of people want to use their bank account, and it'll help you save money. You can also offer it as a hybrid solution. So if you have a fee-based offering, let's say you're doing service fee processing, you can do ACH and not charge a fee. So then you have the behavior for the consumer to say, okay, if I want to use my credit card, I'm charged a fee. But if I don't want to pay a fee, I can just use my bank account and do an ACH. And you give them that opt-out option to be able to pay without paying a fee. We have many people that like that. That's probably one of the favorite models out there where, okay, Mr. Citizen, sister, you want to use your credit card, you pay the fee. If you don't want to pay the fee, do ACH. And it's a nice little hybrid solution that helps keep costs down. Okay, that's it. I helped you have layers, all the moving parts. We didn't even talk about the disruptors, but my main goal was to help you see the different categories and costs to protect your budget. And if you're using the traditional model, there's only so low you can go. After that, you may need to do a consumer fee alternative, and the service fee is the only no-cost solution. Thank you for letting me share some time with you today.